Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Understanding the Changes to the PMI-ACP Certification, presented by Head of Management Solutions at Educate 360, Brent Nair. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting and moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with all of you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the session, so please use the chat or the Q&A for the Q&A option at the end of the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I'll hand it over to you, Brent.
Hey, thanks, Mariela, and welcome everybody on this. At least it's chilly here in Memphis, Tennessee. I know that the southeast on the Gulf Coast is experiencing some wintry weather, and I hope everyone is safe, as well as those of you that might be calling in from the LA area. Hope you all are safe, and the winds hopefully will start to die down here soon. With that being said, we're going to go ahead and get started. I'd like to go ahead and kick us off with two questions that we'll refer to back throughout the webinar. And the first question is, I'd like to know how many of you are PMP certified? How many of you hold your project management certification? And Mariella has launched the question, so please respond, because that has a wee bit of pertinence to the new exam that we'll be talking about today.
All righty, I'll go ahead and give us about 10 more seconds, but it
Sure.
looks like we have a good amount of people already.
Yeah, looks like it. So we've got El Paso and Virginia and San Francisco. Good representation for folks.
All righty, and here are the results.
Okay, so we have 16 people that are PMP certified. All right, well, I'm going to save a little bit of a cliffhanger and let you know why that may or may not be of benefit to you as we move forward. The second question I'd like to launch and get some feedback is, how many of you plan to take the ACP exam in the next 45 days? So how many of you plan to take the ACP exam in the next 45 days? Oh, summer. All right. So you're sitting the exam next Tuesday. All right.
So exciting. I'll give us
Yeah.
another 10 seconds.
Oh,
Awesome.
Joe's already ACP certified. Okay. But okay. Wanting to coach, and then we've got a couple people that are wanting to coach others already certified. Okay. Awesome.
Awesome. And here are those results. Awesome to see.
Okay. So 18 no and 8 yes, planning to take it in the next 45 days. Okay, well, we'll go ahead and come back to those shortly as we go. So we'll have a little bit of fun as we move on. So here's our agenda for today. Feel free to ask questions in chat. Mariela is going to be our chat moderator, and so we'll hold questions until the end, and then we'll spend about 10 minutes on a Q&A. So, but please, as I mention things and bring things up, please post your questions in chat, and we'll make sure that we maintain them as we go forward. So our topics today are, of course, the exam structure. How is it formatted? What are the changes to the exam? And we'll call those domain changes. What are the new eligibility requirements? And then some application process tips. And finally, question and answer period. So as we move on, let's go ahead and talk about the exam structure itself. So the exam is 120 questions. Those 120 questions, are 100 are scored, and 20 are what we call test questions. So that means that the person who is taking the exam, if you're taking the exam, those 20 that are scored won't count towards passing, and nor would they count against your score. So 120 questions total. Now, a question that always comes up that I'll go ahead and talk about is, no, we don't know what a passing score is for PMI. PMI, or the Project Management Institute, for all its exams, just lets people know they passed or they did not pass. And if you passed and or did not pass, which I'm sure all of you will pass, be positive, all of you will pass, they tell you you're above target, below target, or needs improvement. There are three areas in the exam, and we'll get into that, or domains, and we'll get into those, or actually a little bit more, but we'll get into those as we go through the webinar today. So again, we don't know how many questions you have to get right in order to pass. They just say passed, which is good. And it's also can be frustrating. So those 120 questions, you have 3 hours. You have 3 hours to take the exam. And during that 3-hour period, there's a 60 question section, followed by a 10-minute break if you so decide to take a break. And there is another 60 question section, and then you end the exam. A couple of things about the exam to begin with. If you have not taken a PMI exam and you go to the testing center, which I recommend that if possible, you go to the testing center, and you'll go in, they give you a locker, you put your stuff in your locker, they have you empty your pockets and you show them. If you're wearing glasses, they look at your glasses and make sure that they aren't the Meta glasses or any other type of recording glasses. If you have a smart watch, you have to remove that. You can't take your phone in. The only thing you can take into the testing center is your ID, and they'll give you laminated paper, or maybe a small dry erase board to do calculation or to write anything out if you need to. And so that's all you can take into the exam. And so when you go on break, if you decide to take that 10-minute break, you'll be able to go to the restroom, but you can't go to your locker. And then when you come back in, of course, they'll look at your ID and make sure that you're who you say you are and your clone hasn't taken over. If you're wearing glasses, again, they'll look at your glasses to make sure you didn't hook up any new recording device. And then you go in and take that last 60 question segment. By the way, if you take a break and you move on to that next section, that first section, you cannot go back and review. We're going to talk about some exam tips here shortly, so I'll come back to that one. But the time allocations, 3 hours. When you finish the first 60 questions and submit them, you're allowed to take a break. So that's whether that's at the hour mark, hour and 20-minute mark, etc. It depends. Now, the questions themselves, what type of questions are there? There are multiple choice. There are matching. There are multiple response. You might get drag and drop. And there are a lot of, and there will be scenario or situational based questions. So as you study for the exam, keep that in mind. Be aware that there will be situational based questions. And I'll give you an example of one or two of those as we go through the rest of the webinar. A little bit about I should have given you a little bit of a brief history earlier about the exam itself. In 2012, PMI created the Agile Certified Practitioner certification. So in 2012, they created this certification. Last year, or year before last, 2023, they announced they were going to update the certification. And the what we call the exam content outline, or ECO. That's what PMI references throughout this, and they use that to define the areas, and we'll talk about those domains here in a minute. So it was 2012 when it was first launched. The relaunch was this last fall, so the ending of 2024. It created what we call a 4-domain structure, emphasizing technical and leadership. Recognizes organizations are more hybrid than just agile or just traditional project management. This is, of course, still a globally recognized certification. If you're going to work for organizations that are agile, it is recognized usually by most organizations, and others would be Scrum Alliance or some other certification like that. So those are, that's kind of the background, the history of it. I mentioned the question types. So let's move in a little bit more into that exam, into the actual structure of the exam. So of course, when we think about the domain changes, the biggest thing is the agile mindset. You have to have an agile mindset. And what the best way to get that agile mindset, of course, is to be very familiar with the 4 values and 12 principles of agile, and know how those values and principles are applied in agile projects. Yeah, we value people, working software over documentation. Various things are spread throughout the agile mindset. So it's important to keep that in mind as we're doing that. And when we think about that agile mindset, we're talking about principles, those 12 principles. We're talking about collaboration. We're talking about transparency tools and techniques such as Kanban boards, sprint retrospectives, information radiators, dashboards, fishbowl windows, daily stand-ups. Those are all ways that organizations employ or demonstrate that agile mindset by working together. Through transparency, we say, everybody has the information. No one's holding on to information. Talk about experimentation and early feedback. We might do a spike or a sprint spike where we're learning something new. We're experimenting something, which is a term that you'll probably maybe see on the test. Creating collaborative environments, pair programming, fishbowl windows, working together. A question that you could see on the exam related to the mindset, it might be something like, imagine you're leading a team that's resistant to change. How would you apply agile principles to help the team embrace this new way of working? And they might give you 4 choices, and which you would choose which one of those would be the best. So thinking about questions on the exam, of course, they're going to do, PMI does standard test taking methodology, usually 4 responses. Usually 2 of those responses can be thrown out immediately because they don't make any sense or they sound off. And then you have to decide which one of these 2 is the best. That's a standard test taking methodology. So that's the mindset. And we think that it looks like about 28% of the exam is weighted towards the mindset. So whatever 28% of 120 questions are. Maybe Mariella, maybe you can do the math on that one later, and we can come back to it. Another section is leadership, agile leadership, very founded in the concept of servant leadership. That is tantamount in Agile, and it's tantamount throughout the ACP exam, the Agile Certified Practitioner. How do you empower the team? Remember, servant leadership is not about me as the project manager, scrum master, team lead, whatever title I get today. It's about how do I advance? How do we get the team to be the best that they can be? Problem resolution techniques. How do we resolve? Knowledge sharing methods, paired programming, conflict resolution. How do we resolve conflicts? Team charters. We use a document known as a team charter that defines things. That's an example of it. Conflict resolution frameworks, such as looking at what stage is the conflict in. We look at speed B Lees, or the Lees framework of conflict resolution. Those are the items when we think about the leadership section of it. And that's probably about 25% of the exam. So right now we have between mindset and leadership, we have about 53% of the exam. The third area that we talk about is the product. The ACP, the newer ACP, it deals a little bit more with product management than the 2012 version did. So how do we, when we think about product, some of the things that come to mind are backlog refinement or even backlog management, value delivery. How do we deliver value? And then, of course, work visualization. Simple things around that are velocity charts, burn down, burn up charts. How are we doing in the sprint versus how are we doing over the numerous sprints? And by the way, PMI will use the term iteration interchangeably when they're referring to sprints. They'll say sprint or iteration. Those could be charts. Sorry, I got sidetracked. Here's an example of a product question. You've inherited a product backlog with 200 items. How would you approach refinement and prioritization? So what would be some refinement techniques and prioritization? You could do the Moscow method, must have, should have, could have, would have if I had the money. You could use the Kano method. Any one of those methods that might be, or those might be choices that you would choose from. And then the last one is the delivery. That's 28%. So 28%. And that means, okay, we're focusing on metrics. We're focusing on how do we remove impediments? And then, of course, continuous improvement. What are those early feedback mechanisms? The daily stand-up. That's one of the best early feedback mechanisms. Also the burn down chart, burn up chart, velocity chart. Those are all charts that help us see how we're doing. Risk management frameworks. How do we handle risk in Agile? What do we do? What's the difference between an issue and a risk? Risk is future-based. Issue is something that has occurred. Here's an example of a type of question that you might see on the exam. Your team's velocity is declining. What metrics would you examine and what steps would you take to improve? You might look at the burn down chart, the velocity. I would say do a retrospective, figure out what we can do. Those could be answers on that you would choose. So that's the breakdown, those 4 areas. And those are types of questions. And so that brings us to our next section, is the eligibility requirements. So they have updated the eligibility requirements. They have updated the eligibility requirements. So around that, so educational background. You have to have a secondary education. secondary diploma, high school, GED associate, or a whatever your global equivalent is. You need to have 28 hours of formal training in agile practices. And this is note, until March 31st, that requirement is only 21 hours. So after April 1st, the requirement goes up to that 28-hour mark. So for those of you that are going to be taking the exam in the next 45 days, you're only going to need 21 hours of formal educational experience related to agile training. Those learning courses can be, of course, the great courses that we offer here at Project Management Academy, Educate 360. And there are others out there. They have to align with the exam content outline. They have to have some exercises, have to have an end course certificate as well. Additionally, one requirement is that you have to have 2 years of agile experience in the past 5 years, or 1 year of agile experience and a degree from a global accreditation program, or 1 year of agile experience and active third-party certification, or, and that's where this other question that we asked earlier, you have to have, if you have your PMP certification. So your PMP certification will also be of benefit to you. So that's why we asked that question. So remember, after March 31st, the requirements go up to 28 hours. And application tips. So what do you need to do? Well, you have to, of course, record your professional learning hours. Make sure that you have make sure you have the course title. Make sure you have the instructor, the name, the dates of when you completed it, those contact hours. If you have a certificate, make sure that you take a digital copy or have a digital copy of it. Other required documentation could be your certification. If you have your PMP, your PMP number, your PMP certification number from PMI. Other certificates, if you have some other, as we mentioned earlier, if you have another like Scrum Alliance or something like that, you can use that as well. Application best practices. Keep in mind that as you fill out the application, make sure that you have all of your documents. Double check your dates. I know this sounds silly, but make sure you have a valid method of payment, because you do have to pay to take the exam. When you write out your experience, make sure that you use clear language. Mention things like led daily stand-ups, engaged stakeholders, led backlog refinement sessions, things like that, resume-based words that would help you in making sure that you get your application passed. So make sure you review all of those, double check, make sure that everything is done before you hit submit, and that will help you speed your process up. So that will hopefully help. Now, some of you may be be lucky or unlucky and get audited. It's nothing to fear. All you have to do is get employers and or certifying bodies to attest to that you did what you said that you did. So that does happen from PMI at times, about 5 to 10 people. Oop. Sorry, went too fast. Hang on. My mouse jumped all over the place. Sorry about that, folks. All right. Other way around. Sorry. Am I still sharing, Mariella? It looks like I dropped.
Screen. Can you?
Yep. Yep.
Awesome. Perfect.
Okay. All right. For some reason it dropped. Okay. So couple of things to keep in mind. We have some upcoming PMP certification courses, but before we get to that, let's open the floor for questions. Mariella, do we have any questions?
Absolutely, Brent. We do. We have a couple. And
Okay.
if you guys want to throw any last minute ones in, go right ahead, but we have a couple here. How long has the PMI ACP existed? Is it new or are the exam changes new?
Exam changes are new. They're new to 2000, the later part of the fall of 2024. The exam itself was created, the certification was created in 2012.
Excellent. And then we had a couple more. Can they be CSM training courses? I'm gonna
And
assume
I
for.
believe you mean Certified Scrum Master. Is that correct, Mindy?
I'll give Mindy a second to throw it in there if she can.
Yep,
Oh,
it
nice. Yep.
is. Yeah, yes. So yes, they can be certified Scrum Master. Those can count. And so do you only need to apply or have to sit for the exam? You have to apply and take the exam by March 31st for the 21 hours to be applicable. So the exam has to be taken.
That's good info to move forward with. Absolutely. Alrighty. And then just as a quick reminder to everybody in chat, if they were not able to attend the full session, just to give you guys a heads up, we will be sharing this recording with all of you in an email after the webinar, so you can go take a look back at some of the info we chatted about today. And I think that will be it for us today with 3 minutes to spare.
I would, Marielle, if I may, I'd like to put a shameless or not shameless plug in for our, if you haven't had any training, please, and take our courses. All of our instructors, not only do we pass along great knowledge as we are practitioners, we also give you test taking tips and tricks and strategy that will help you pass the exam.
Absolutely. And as a reminder, we will be sending any info over to your email as well post webinar. So if you want any more info on projectmanagementacademy.com or .net, please go ahead and be on the lookout for that as well. Thank you so much, Brent.
Thank you. And thank you all for participating. And I hope you all stay warm. Oh,
Absolutely. Stay bundled
oh,
up, everyone. Oh, forget one more
it's,
thing.
I thought somebody had, I saw somebody had their hand raised, but it looks like it dropped.
Oh,
Sorry.
it dropped. No worries. Alrighty. Thanks everyone so much for attending today. We appreciate you all. Stay
Thank you
warm,
all.
stay bundled, and thanks again, Brent.
Thank you.
Alrighty. Bye everyone. See
Bye
y'all
bye.
very soon.